Hi. Do excuse this episode's, well, this, not even an episode, it's a reflection. Do excuse this reflection's intriguing audio quality. It's such a nice day outside. I've got one half of an index card full of small notes. Let's get started. Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass is exactly what it said on the tin. One day, Jimmy looked inside. The store page advertised an imaginative adventure full of job swapping, equipment, horrors, and wonders, all told through the senses, the perspective of an 8-year-old Jimmy. Jimmy's had a lot happen in his life. Our hopes and fears and dreams, our imaginations, our stories, what we craft in our heads is built off our experiences, our perceptions. Originality is us taking things we've seen and heard and smelled and tasted around us, whether it's things that happen to us directly or through the experiences of others, and we make those things our own. We paraphrase off each other, we plagiarize off one another. We take those things and make them our own. There's few things that are truly original. But Jimmy, that's no exception. What we encounter is built off of his limited life experience of 8 years. And much of that recently has been spent in dire straits. Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass pursues Jimmy's fears, what he's scared of. We start off in Homeflower with the doghouse. We travel with Buck, and Jimmy has mixed feelings about Buck. Jimmy's empathetic. It's a double-edged blade. It helps him connect better with people. It makes him a better person. But Buck hurts him. Andrew at times hurts him too. Jimmy sets off with Buck on a grand adventure for honey. He ends up fighting the petty thugs, the first agents of the Pulsating Mass. He ends up fighting the Buddy Bees, ends up kidnapped by his grandma who's been hacked by the Pulsating Mass, and there's some feelings that Jimmy has regarding his deceased grandma. From there, you end up in Legato, rescuing Jimmy's mom, and Jonathan's in the party too. Travel across that lovely, idyllic, musical continent. You end up facing the dog in Mute Notes. When the dog is defeated, the Pulsating Mass recruits something else Jimmy's afraid of. Jonathan. Not directly Jonathan, but Jimmy is consumed by the guilt of greed, of material possessions, of having stolen the stuffed animal. We all outgrow possessions. We may still hold on to those things because we recognize the value that it had to us in the past, but we don't use them anymore. They're just... it's clutter, it's stuff, it's sentimentality. Games, books, stuffed animals, pillows, blankets, furniture, vehicles. Jimmy outgrew Jonathan, and then all that was left there was the guilt. We eventually defeated Jonathan Bear through the other world that was in Ashby's. But that didn't stop there, because the Pulsating Mass and Buck made an alliance, a pact, whatever. The Pulsating Mass again jumps to something that Jimmy is afraid of. How much of the story is Jimmy's fear of the pulsating mass itself, and Jimmy's fear of everything the pulsating mass touches? It is a long, arduous adventure from the secret knowledge to trying to rescue Mom. We end up in Shinryu Academy, where it is plainly outlined, hinted at before in the game, but plainly, outlined, like highlighted, you got arrows drawn to it. Jimmy's dyslexia. And with that, his fear of school, principal pulsating mass, this ends up being stated later in the game at the end. Stupid, worthless, moron. It's having been put on the gifted track, but failing to live up to the expectations his dad set for him. How he's a master of mathematics, but can't handle, can't comprehend the written English language. Once we recover Mom, we travel through the subway where we learn more about the pulsating mass's experiments. The central hub. We make it there. Bucks bursts right on through. He's too powerful. We have to flee, as the pulsating mass takes over everything. We retrieve our family, we recover them, make it back to the world of Jimmy's imagination, away from Planet Jimmy and Planet Helga and Planet Andrew and Planet Lars. We work on making it back into what used to be the central hub to face off against the pulsating mass, as the prophecy dictated. And the prophecy was fulfilled. And that was Jimmy's story. It was a story he told to himself one day. Jimmy looked inside, is the tagline for the game. I can't refute that he looked inside. That was exactly what it said on the tin. He told a story. Was it the first story he's told himself? Will it be the last story he tells himself? We confronted so many of Jimmy's fears, not just on the main story path, but off that path too. Potential nyctophobia, claustrophobia, arachnophobia, news snatches of a serial killer, imaginary numbers, Cthulhu, carnivals. Actually, carnivals was on the story path. Jonathan Land, yeah. Lots of wonderful things. Again, ideas that he's had, that he's borrowed from movies and maybe not so much literature, unless he's listening to audiobooks, video games, from his family and friends. Stories. Just like the one that he told himself of confronting all of those things. And in the end, conquering not just the pulsating mass, but his dyslexia. It's telling there that the end of his story is him being able to read the secret knowledge without his father's help. He did that himself. No one else. Alone with the necromantic stagehands, funerary pallbearers. They look similar to the cultists, but they do have a noticeably different appearance. And like many things in this game, they've been foreshadowed. You'll recall during the reunion episode. I just looked at, like, my playlist not too long ago. 78, I think it is? Yeah, 78. That the statues around those portals. Yeah. All these things that were shown, not told, lurking at periphery. The room in which we found the secret knowledge, behind those glittering eyes. The statues in those corners. These status effects, the common ones, the ones that are actually detailed to us. And then the ones that aren't detailed to us. All these things lurking. I'm imaginative, I'm a daydreamer. I've shared experiences last year of how increasingly I was not here. I was going away. It's something that came up around my dad's final year and intensified. Just an increasing desire to not be here, to go away. And I have realms and worlds built off of just so much time being spent there, the development. The amount of detail in Jimmy's imagination is indicative of how much time Jimmy has spent there. Partly by necessity. Of course, after the story's over, the dreams aren't packed up, they're just reshuffled. Jimmy ends up back in his house, reuniting with his dream family. It's worth noting that at no point are we forced to walk out the front door of Jimmy's house in the post-game. I called it a New Game Plus, but it's not a New Game Plus. The game's not starting over, it's just post-game activities. The story's over. Jimmy's still looking inside, but we put a bow on the prophecy storyline. You try to walk out that front door, though. Mom says you don't have to go out there. You can spend as much time. Think about it, I love you. There's no mistaking that walking out that door is the end of Jimmy. His imagination has lost color. His mind has slipped. And ending at the same place we began the game. I'm sorry. I'm about to make a literary jump that would make at least one of my old English teachers so delightful. How familiar are you with 1984? The dystopian novel written by George Orwell. I thoroughly enjoyed. I have 2 copies of it. I'm not sure which dystopian novel I enjoy more, 1984 or Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. They've both influenced me. I have others too. Margaret Atwood's A Handmaid's Tale, Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here, so forth. Anyway, in the story, Winston Smith is working for a totalitarian government. He secretly dreams of rebellion, of fighting against the system, of reclaiming what he thinks should be there. He enters into a forbidden relationship with a young woman, and together they think that they're fighting against the inner party, the regime, against Big Brother. They enter into secret initiation with the revolution. They get literature. They're filled with hope. But it was a setup. They're captured, imprisoned. Winston is forcibly coerced, repeatedly, until he is confronted by his worst fear. And in that moment, he does something that he never thought that he would do: betray. And even though that coercion and threat is removed, Winston realizes that the betrayal, that thing that he felt there, was real. At the end, he's in the chestnut. There's a little ditty, a little like children's thing about the chestnut. Like, beneath the chestnut tree, I sold you and you sold me. I don't remember the exact words of it. His body is broken. He's sipping oily gin. He's playing chess, like old, emaciated, like folks that he's seen there in the past. There's a news bulletin that happens, and he gets excited about the news bulletin. It's what he predicted. A wonderful victory for Oceania. And in that moment, he mentally leaves the chestnut. The brainwashing is complete. He imagines himself selling out everyone and everything, whatever the inner party wants from him. He imagines like being in public, like in a public court, full like stage for everyone to see, selling out everything and everyone. He imagines a bullet in his brain by a guard. It's a mental bullet, though. He's not physically killed. But the person we knew as Winston is no more. And the story ends with him realizing that he loves Big Brother. It doesn't matter whether Winston Smith lives for another 5, 10, 20 years. The story is over. The challenge is done. The man we used to know as Winston Smith, who sought rebellion against the party, is dead. When Jimmy walks out the front door, it doesn't matter whether his body is dead. It doesn't matter whether he lives on in a vegetative coma. It doesn't matter whether they find a cure for whatever sickness he has. That's the day Jimmy stops looking inside. That's the day the challenge, the crux of like the tagline, one day Jimmy, is over. He's done. But Jimmy doesn't have to walk through that door. The alternative, as Jimmy's own imagination pitches to him, is to live on the rest of his life in endless dreams. The world he has concocted for himself, where he's found happiness for Lars, where he's found understanding from his father, where he's found appreciation from Buck. Earlier in the series, I noted that Buck had received so little like story attention and detail. My attitude has since changed. By being one of Jimmy's fears, he received that story attention. Just like Jonathan Bear, just like dyslexia, just like the dog. Mom is the one that Jimmy has no regrets or negative feelings towards at all. If anything, she has the least story detail. Although it's hard to make that case, I think. So yeah, by walking through the front door, Jimmy's done. There's an I'm sorry. The color drains away from his imagination, and then it just flatlines. He stops looking inside. But Casey never forces you, the player, to walk Jimmy through that front door. And there's something else, too. Jimmy, for all the value we may have attached to him, is an unreliable narrator. He's sick. Tragically, immensely sick. He's been living in his head for a long time. Everything that we hear, that we read, that we see, is based off of Jimmy's perceptions and his attitudes, all in his head. There's like a few like story moments where you think that something is going on outside of his head, but that's still being filtered through Jimmy's head. Jimmy can be wrong. Jimmy can be mistaken. He can be making bad choices, misrepresenting things. But it's easy to understand why Jimmy would have lost energy, lost vitality, lost hope lost his imagination. So for Jimmy not to walk through that front door is to probably go on with the same life that he's been living. But that doesn't mean that that can't change. Again, though, that does break the scope of the game, too. One day Jimmy looked inside. If there's a point in which he no longer has to look inside, we still break the confines of the game. It's good. Like, the story ends up reaching its natural conclusion there, too. He's no longer forced to keep looking inside. He'll still have that inside, but the imaginative world that he's constructed has to change because his life has changed, because of surviving his sickness. Again, though, it does break, like, the confines of the game, like, so Casey can't, like, detail that. It's like if you're playing a role-playing game with a group and it's based on a city, Blades in the Dark comes into mind, and you're within the city of Duskfall. The story and the detail and the trappings of the game all takes place within the city. If you want to leave the city and not continue playing in the city, you've escaped the confines of what the game details. That doesn't mean that you've suffered a bad ending. It just means that the game can no longer convey that story. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Jimmy's not fucked unless you want him to be fucked. Unless you want to walk him through that front door. There's been plenty of wonderful feedback from viewers throughout this entire series. A rare moment here. I'm going to say thank you. Thank you. To you folks who've come along for the ride. It's been hard on some of you, I know. There's been hardship as a result of my stringent, no spoiler policy. I only ended up blocking 2 folks. And they were for relatively minor things on the no spoiler thing. One was the second comment on the first video who told me about an Easter egg in which you use an ooze to peek into your parents' bedroom while they're having adult entertainment time. I played off later on in the series, like, oh, hey, yeah, an idea, like using this revolting blob to, like, go through the drain neat. But no, I was told that one pretty quickly. The second was detailing Grimclaw before I had actually gotten to the Grimclaw fight and knew that Grimclaw's name was Grimclaw. Out there on Dingaling Fuck You Spire. Yeah. The feedback, the interaction I've had with you folks, Block 2, which will be rescinded. I'll remove those. And the chastisings I've given to folks, still the interaction and seeing the story blossom for you folks and inspiring some of you to play the game yourself or to refer it to other people have enriched this series and enriched me. This has definitely been one of my favorite series I've done. I'm not sure where my ultimate ranking is right now. I'll have to give it more time to see how I feel about this series. Let's get on with it. Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass, a month, 3 months, 6 months down the road, assuming I'm still alive then. And see ultimately like where it shakes out compared to some other heavy hitters. But this was the best game I tried in 2018, and this series has been awesome. And it's been done not just through my lifting, but through your contributions. Some of you have difficulty contributing. I just appreciate it all the more when you find the effort and means to do so. Of course, the series itself is not over. We've still got some other actions to do. We've got an arena to revisit. The Dark Dungeon I want to revisit as well to refight the Dark Demon. Shinryu has some ninjas that I want to find and shake. There's these fucking stones. I gotta puzzle that out too, because we've collected 2 of them. What could it mean? Mr. Marvelous has more rewards for us. Maybe he can tell us about the stones, because frogs hop on those, right? And then there's Heart Prison. Yeah. I also want to hit up the Wilted Lands, too. During the credit sequence, we saw Johnny, Katana, Dee Dee, and Norman, like, overlooking the area where we first fought them. I'd be interested in revisiting with them. And there's another area, too, like the mirror that's in Kingland that had, like, the sleeping princess. Maybe I'll ask Casey about that fucking anything. At the end of this series, I might just start asking for questions and actually wanting to get answers, or digging for information myself or the internet. As of right now, though, I still want to explore these things, look for them myself, or maybe relegate it to a second playthrough. Like, for example, the ultimate construction. What happens if you violate those rules? I'm curious about that. I had not anticipated I would be scouring this game like I did. I hadn't anticipated that I would play it for this long. I hadn't anticipated that I would buy the damn thing. Imagine me buying an RPG Maker game in 2018 and still playing the motherfucker. Really enjoyed it. It's been delightful. Story and gameplay wise, they're interwoven together. They carry each other. That's important. Without the story, the gameplay mechanics are interesting, but I can play better games. It's like more strategic gameplay for me. Without having to deal with this RPG Maker interface, you understand? I think that's the primary drawback for the game, the RPG Maker interface. I mean, there's a few areas I dislike. Dingalings, fuck you. Spire. Lisa-inspired bullshit breaking through bridges. As the rotting jack-o'-lantern. Man, I was mad. And then, of course, the imaginary numbers area. Just didn't do anything for me at all. But, both optional areas. There's nothing about the gameplay areas through the main storyline that set me wrong. Not that I recall, anyway. If you recall something that you think bothered me, do leave that in the comments. Along with sharing your thoughts and feelings about the game. You don't just have to share them with me. Share them with Casey. Casey's got a Twitter presence. Let Casey know. Your ideas, your feelings, your angers. Why is Clubhouse furniture so difficult to manage? Why is Mr. Marvelous not actually that marvelous? How's Mr. Grouse doing? How's Accelerated Dynamics doing? They handled, like, packaging and supplies for the game, right? Of course, the biggest thing that we have to do in all the content that we have left in the post-game is the Heart Prison, which I reckoned I wouldn't be able to attempt until I had Buck in my party, because the first door has, like, Buck's face, essentially, like his emotion. Now, I'm gonna call my shot here. I typically don't do this. I've refrained from giving my input about the sights and sounds and adventures we've experienced at times, but other times I've recklessly speculated as well, like about Jimmy being in a coma, like over half the damn series ago, like in the episode 20s or 30s or whatever. Yeah, but I'm gonna call my shot here. This is an informed shot based on the information that I have about what I've seen of Jimmy's experiences and what I've seen of my own experiences. Yeah. About Heart Prison. So, if you're not into that, then I reckon you should probably stop watching, listening. But if you are into that, about hearing how awesome I am. Now, you can't do this as well. Don't call your shot in the comments, because then people will have to stay away from the comments. Only I'm allowed to call my shot. That's Grimith privilege right there. Only I may shoot. America. So, I think Heart Prison is going to involve the fear that was alluded to when we walked out that front door. I'm sorry. I think Heart Prison is going to involve Jimmy's empathetic but misguided fear of hurting his loved ones and of being a stupid, worthless moron. I think it's going to involve imagining that he should die so that he doesn't burden anyone else. That's what we're going to confront in Heart Prison. That's the shot I'm calling right there. It's and it's been imprisoned because it's something that he doesn't want to confront. Like how the great idea of him being a phoenix was something that we had to get 25 light bulbs for him to, like, feel inspired enough to have that. I agree with Metal Slime Hunt in the comments about that. Like, it's so difficult for him to feel inspired by this point that we had to find all of those light bulbs. Or maybe it's just, Casey wanted to lock a form in a secret dungeon. And then he built, like, the storyline later. Like, how could we? Yeah, we'll just have a bunch of light bulbs. We'll have fucking assholes make their own justifications or whatever. Ha ha ha. If you just spitfire a bunch of, like, random things, like, on, like, the dartboard, you can have players draw their own conclusions. It saves you the effort of doing so. There could be no fucking correlation at all, right? We'll just have them think of this as art. You understand? Just the artistry of everything. Casey, you son of a bitch. I know that's what you did. Now, the game has done great with foreshadowing of layering all these things, interwoven together. There's been no great sort of like, I didn't fucking see that one coming. That said, becoming Punch Tanaka. Oh, that scene. There's so many other thoughts and feelings I have about the game, but I think it's time for, with just nothing but this damn little one index card page. Listen, I already did my crazy relationship whenever I built a bridge between the end of 1984 and what we saw at the end of that front door in Jimmy the Pulsating Mass. I really fucking applied myself. I'm one day Grimith walked back inside. That'll take care of it for me. Yeah, enjoyed the ride. We still got more of the ride to go. Bonus, we'll go get some ice cream, go to the arena, get into the Heart Prison, see some action, maybe try out some different combos. We'll certainly have a different party composition. Be able to play around with Jonathan, use that secret furniture combo that gives him fucking plus 100. Woo! And, Buck and Hitomi. Keep in mind, like, for as much as I scoured the game, like, I've been through every fucking area, I've not seen everything, and I'm certainly not getting every item. Like the furniture stuff, or most of the stuff in the Dark Dungeon. It's a little too much for me. I don't find the Dark Dungeon area disappointing. It's exactly what it says in the 10. I've done other mega dungeons before in the course of my gaming career, my gaming life. And they are what they are. And when you're done with them, and you don't feel like, wow, I want to do that again, that sounds great. I think the only exception to one of those things has been like Stardew Valley, but I don't consider that to be a mega dungeon, like delving through all those floors of the mines. It's not bad, and even then it's like, let's do all of the fucking floors again, woo! Anyway, I'm rambling. Take care, everyone. I've enjoyed it. Leave feedback if you've got it. Do encourage it. The curtain has been pulled back. We can discuss the entirety of the game. Keep your guns in your holsters about making reckless predictions for the future, or even not so reckless predictions, like what we might fight in the arena, or what else we might see in the Heart Prison. Keep that to yourselves. Again, Grimith Privilege. Leave some feedback with Casey. Yeah, that's it. Take care, everyone. It's been a pleasure, and may it continue to be a pleasure. May we continue to look inside, and not lose the color from our imaginations.